is Wednesday, February 24th, and this is the Hendrick-Hudson School Board of Education meeting. Can I have a motion to open the meeting, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We will be entering executive session shortly. We will be entering executive session for the purpose of collective negotiations under the Taylor Law, medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment or promotion or demotion or discipline or suspension or removal of a particular person or corporation. Can I get a motion to move into exec, please? Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, so for the public, we should be back in the public portion of the meeting at approximately 7 p.m. and we will see you then. Good evening. Tonight is Wednesday, February 24th, and this is the Hendrick-Hudson School Board of Education meeting. The board trustees have just left executive session and we are now back in the public session. To get started on our public session, can we please have the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand and recite the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated.
Thank you. That was very nice.
Thank you.
Joe, which class was that? Oh, we seem to have lost Joe.
Is he with us yet?
I think he was, and now he's not. So we'll continue on. We'll get the update from him later. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as stated, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Does
Aye.
anybody have anything to pull from the consent agenda? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I don't think there was anything pulled ahead of time. Nope, there were no items removed from the consent agenda ahead of time this evening. So that brings us right to our superintendent's report. And Joe, you missed my question before, but who was the pledge tonight from?
Oh, that was from Buchanan Verplank Elementary School, and that was given to us by one of our third grade teachers. And I will tell you who that is by the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
So superintendent's report, I have a couple items. Greg, I don't know if you can share the screen so I can use that as a agenda here. But while Greg does that, I will comment on something that is out there in the community. And one piece is as the board deliberates about whether or not to move forward with the Princeton plan. There are some community members who have asked me questions, and I know some other board members about whether or not the community will vote on the Princeton plan. Because in 2019, a controller's audit report suggested that the community will vote on the Princeton plan. So the controller's audit report is an outside agency. The New York State Controller comes in and they did a very specific audit of district finances. And one of their concerns that they raised was whether or not the district was going to be in a financially strong position to embrace the reduction in pilot payments from Indian Point. And in our interview with the controller, we told them that we are contemplating some restructuring at the elementary level. At that point, we were looking at potentially closing schools and moving grade levels around, and ultimately we ended up with the Princeton plan. Now, what the controller's report suggested is that the public will vote on whether or not the community will move forward with the Princeton plan, and that is just an erroneous error from the controller's report. What the community votes on every year are board trustees, and they vote on approving or not approving the school budget. The potential or even the thought of adopting the Princeton plan is a policy decision and a vote that the board would take, not a vote of the public. So I want to make sure that folks understand that we don't write the controller's report. We have very little input to the controller's report, but that's a very important distinction and clarification we wanted to make, because some people are pointing to that report saying, see, the controller said that the community has to vote to approve the Princeton plan, and that's not the case. So I wanted to provide that clarity. In that vein, an update on our Princeton plan deliberations. Our full stakeholder committee will be coming together between now and in the early part of March. It will be to review all of the different scenarios and things that we've learned over the last number of months. The stakeholder committee will participate in what we call a SWOT analysis. It's basically a facilitated feedback mechanism where the committee will be able to weigh in on the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that potentially adopting the Princeton plan would provide our school community. The SWOT analysis is used in many organizations, including schools, as a decision-making tool to make sure that decision makers, or in this case, the board, can see all sides of an issue and understand the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of making a decision to impact that issue. So the group will go through that facilitated conversation in the next number of weeks, and we'll deliver that analysis to the board for the board to deliberate, and then ultimately share with the community and engage the community with what their thoughts and desires are. So we're not there yet because the committee needs to meet. So we are actually meeting tomorrow to pick some dates and try to get those calendarized so we can begin the end of the process so we can deliver this report to the board no later than March 10th. So that's an important date for people to mark in their calendar. Speaking of calendar, I'll go out of order a little bit, but Dr. Roller leads our committee from different stakeholders throughout our employment groups on devising the calendar for the following school year. And our calendar for next year poses some challenges, as it always does, but I wanted to give Dr. Roller a quick update on what the board can expect for approving a calendar in the next couple meetings.
Before we do that, Joe, can you talk a little bit about what's planned for community input in between the SWOT analysis that's given to the board and our decision making?
Yeah, so we know it's really, really important to hear from the community, and so we'll be setting up a number of virtual meet and greets, certainly on Zoom or Google Meet, because we can't have large gatherings yet in school or in public or private places. So we'll be setting up a series of opportunities for the community to engage with the results of the SWOT analysis. We'll set up, as we have in the past, opportunities in the morning, midday, and evening. Just given the enormity, what we anticipate, a lot of folks who want to participate and hear about it, we may need to cap attendance just so it can be manageable. For those of you who have been on Zoom meetings or Google Meet meetings, if you get more than 30 or 40 participants, it can get a little unwieldy. But we'll be setting up a handful plus of opportunities for folks to sign up, review the SWOT analysis, and engage in a Q&A with myself and members of our team. I know the PTAs are communicating with the parents of their school in terms of their participation on the committee. I know the middle school and high school put out a joint communication earlier this week, and I know the 3 elementaries are doing it as well. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for folks to engage and learn a little bit more and ask some questions.
Thank
Okay.
you.
With that, I'll turn it over to Margaret.
Wait, Alex has a question.
Sorry. So when we get to the SWOT analysis on the 10th, how will that be presented? Will it be John, the facilitator, or will it be one of the stakeholders from the group? How how and who will be presenting that?
Yeah, usually the SWOT analysis is finalized in a couple different documents. Because we have so many stakeholder committee members, the process itself will be a little it will take a while, I guess. It will be a little more laborious than if we were in person, but likely what will come out of it will be a list of priorities from the committee in terms of identifying all the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And they'll be weighted. And what I mean by weighted is not weighted by my opinion or the facilitator's opinion, but weighted by the committee participants agreeing with certain statements so they're not repetitive. So, you know, we may show you the top 5 themes that came out of each SWOT and then some of the others, or we may just show you everything, and that will be, you know, printed and emailed, and then certainly as part of a board meeting will be a public document so everyone can see thematically or individually all of the comments.
And who's making that presentation?
That would be John McCarthy, who will be who's our facilitator, who's been leading this, who's been holding our hands through this process.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions about the Princeton plan proceedings before we move on? Okay.
All right, so I'll let Margaret talk about our school calendar, and then we've had some updates over the last 48 hours around state assessment. So I'll turn it over to her.
So let's start with calendar. We met before the break to look at the calendar for 21-22. It's pretty straightforward, and BOCES usually sets the tone for the region by releasing theirs first, and then districts try to align as best we can, knowing that we all have employees who are also parents in neighboring districts. So the next year starts not just with Labor Day, but with the Jewish holidays immediately. So we actually don't begin school until September 9th for children. Staff comes in for the past few years. We've been coming in before Labor Day weekend. That will remain, but we won't see the kids, unfortunately, until the 9th. And then we do have one day that we are working on with HHEA to put back in the schedule because there is an extra holiday now in June that we have to respect. So it looks as though the day before Thanksgiving, which has for the past few years been a day off, will revert to being more than likely a half day of school. I'm sure we can all remember a few years ago when it was a half day for the kids and the teachers usually had an assignment that they needed to complete regarding some professional videos that they are required to view every year. So it's likely that will be what we revert to. Joe and myself just need to make sure that that's all that we see possible with that particular day, and then the calendar will be finalized. I'm hoping to get that done within the next week. State tests. So I'm going to put my reading glasses on and make sure I quote this correctly for all of you. So the state filed a waiver with the Department of Education, the federal U.S. Department of Education on, I believe, early February, maybe the 12th. And it was a very sweeping request. They wanted all tests removed except for the NISA-SLAT, which is the test that our second language learners take to prove proficiency in acquiring English. The U.S. Department of Education got back to the state yesterday to say that they will not give a blanket waiver, but instead they will work along several pathways that were also suggested as part of the waiver. Those pathways include not insisting on students coming into school to take a state assessment. I'm going to say to you that we don't know what that really means yet right now, and they're working out further language and guidance for us. Every district has remote students. We also have hybrid students. So we really need them to look at the testing window and provide for us the real opportunities for children to take this assessment. We believe they will still not permit the test to be taken at home for many obvious reasons, but we need more guidance on that first exception that they've provided. The second thing they also assured us was that they would not use the performance on this year's assessments as part of state accountability for schools and for districts. So their lens is that the assessment is a measure of learning, but not an accountability tool this year. And the final exception that they're looking towards is that the Regents exams would not be required to meet graduation requirements. And New York State will further look to cancel any Regents exams that are not part of a graduation plan. So that is literally the language that we received from the DOE to the state, and then from the state to the local superintendents. Again, there's a lot of detail missing from that guidance that we are all waiting for. I've had several conversations even before the news about the waiver was shared, especially with Anicia at the middle school, in terms of what does this look like when a whole building is assessing all 3 grade levels in play, and kids need to come in and we have to respect social distancing, et cetera. So big conversations to come. The guidance has been all along, while we were waiting for the decision to be made, to plan as though you were going to be administering tests this year until we heard differently. We also have some questions about the science exams. So grade 4 and grade 8 take science exams late May, early June. Those are in 2 parts. One is a written exam, no problem with that. The other one is a performance task. So how do we give that performance task, which is a series of experiments that kids move from one station to the next? How do we wipe down what I just did so that Lisa can come and use it next? We really have lots of questions, and now we await the answers to those questions. So that's where we are right now. Before I go on to just a couple of other things, does anybody have questions about the state testing environment in the schools, et cetera?
I do. How do
Okay.
they think these tests are actually going to be useful, since the situation, and if they're saying you can shorten the test and do it in a different way? I know in the past the test changed kind of year to year for a couple of years in a row, and you couldn't even compare one year's test to the last year's tests and make it any kind of a valid assessment as far as learning and progress. So what are they expecting to get out of these?
Adorable,
idea?
right, Margaret? She's adorable.
This is as good as mine. You know, I've talked with our teachers a lot in the past maybe 3 weeks about this, as they were stressing around all of the different components. And, you know, basically the answer is the same. You know, all of our kids are stressed in this environment, even if it looks like they're doing well and they're going with the flow and showing up every day and all that stuff. What would be the point of this is what I think we're all asking ourselves. If it's really a measure of learning, then I think really the schools would be the best judge of that. I don't think creating this hyper anxious environment for kids who are already at that level, I'm not sure what we're hoping to gain, except to say that we did it. And, you know, that's not really good enough for me when we're working with children. So, but, you know, we have folks that we have to answer to. So we will look for the guidance and we will make it work as best we can. And we will try to keep our kids as calm as we can and remind them that this is and a single event in a whole year. And we know what they're capable of day to day, and we'll hold their hand through it and move along. So that's as we get updates, I will update you at our board meetings about where we stand and what the next series of events have to be for all of us. And that will definitely be a scheduling nightmare. What did we talk about? Calendar, state tests. Really, other than that, it is helping our probationary teachers get ready to submit their portfolios to all of you. Obviously, you have received the links for the folks who are up for tenure this year. We have quite a number of probationary teachers still in the pipeline. And it's always a pleasure to work with them and answer questions. Laura is my partner in this. And we've gone the route of offering office hours, especially during COVID with all of the Google Meets that we've been doing. And actually that's worked out pretty well, don't you think, Laura? I mean, it's nice to not drag everybody to a meeting if they don't have to be there. Folks come in, and I had to remind somebody at the high school that, he showed up and then he was sitting there. And I said, you have your question answered. You can feel free to go. You don't have to wait. I said, think about it like going when you're in college and you go see a professor. You go in, you do your whatever it is you need to confer with, and then you're off on your merry way and someone comes in behind you. I said, you're more than welcome to sit and chat with me, but I don't want you to feel obligated. So I think the office hours have been going very nicely for folks. It allows them some freedom in terms of time and movement. And it's for Laura and I, it's a block when we're available. Sometimes we cover for each other if we can't both be free at the same time. But it's a good group of people. Laura Eade and Carrie Scotto, who oversee the mentor program, are delightful to work with, and I think a wonderful resource for our first year teachers. And our mentors have been doing, yeoman's work in this environment, trying to make this work and observe one another and journal with one another. And, so it's been an interesting process with them. We are always open to feedback. And I know nervously they are awaiting March 1st when their portfolios become finalized for all of you. So aside from that, I mean, working with teachers, I actually made a visit to BV the other day. It was the first time that I've been in a building. Well, I think Lisa and I were in Frank G, so I take that back. But it was lovely to be in the building. I think people were like, oh my gosh, she's here. And it's funny because you look at people with their mask on and you're like, is that who I think that is? But I had a couple of nice chats with folks around some assessment work that we're doing at the primary level in our benchmarking, since this is winter benchmarking period. So it was nice to get out of the office and actually see other people, other teachers, and see what's going on a little bit. Most of the questions to, tack on to some of the Princeton Plan conversation, really most of the questions that I'll speak for Lisa as well, that we're getting are really at this point operational. Like, when will there be a decision? Will we have to, how much time will we have to pack our classrooms? When will we know which school we're going to and who the principal will be? So they're very focused on timing of things and how that will all begin to play out. And I know I had a leader meeting the other day, and I encouraged them to, I said, we've arranged conversations for you with other school districts, but please feel free on any social media that you belong to or any teacher friends that if you know people who have worked through a transition to Princeton Plan, absolutely speak to them and get their thoughts on it. This isn't a secret. It isn't, a secret committee. If you can reach out to people, by all means, go ahead and do that. And it doesn't even have to be in New York State. Grade banded schools are grade banded schools. So if they grade band in Massachusetts, and somebody who's lived through it, give them a call and ask the questions. So, that's been the conversation with that leadership team that serves the grade level leaders at K-5 serve as members of the Princeton Plan Committee just because of their leadership position. So we met the other day, the day that we had the early dismissal. We did a phone call in the afternoon just to catch up on some things because we'd been snowed out for 2 meetings. So I wanted to make sure that I could share some info with them, and I could also hear what they needed from me in the next few weeks going forward. So I think that's all I have. Joe, was there anything else that you wanted me to jump in on, or did I cover it?
No, I think you did great. Thank you. And so just as a housekeeping item for the board, at a future board meeting in March, we'll have the calendar ready for your approval. We'll try to get those done before we enter spring break, and spring break is early this year. So one of our March board meetings, we'll have the calendar as a consent item and get that approved, and then we'll send that out to families.
Alex, you had a question?
Yeah, for Margaret or Joe. I know in the middle school and high school, attendance is down, it's low. But has any decision been made about Wednesdays for the families? There are a lot of families that want their kids in the classroom as much as possible. So has any decision been made about Wednesdays?
Yeah, so both middle school and high school are having that conversation. I'll tell you that today was an in-person day for the Monday, Tuesday cohort. I can tell you that attendance today at both the middle school and high school was much less than attendance yesterday. So we know that there are parents who were desiring for their kids to come in on Wednesdays. We didn't see that today. In fact, the middle school had 39 less students today than they did yesterday. It's the same cohort. And the high school, I was just looking at it, I believe had 21 less students, today than yesterday. So we are prioritizing students with IEPs and students who are struggling to come in 4 or 5 days a week. Lisa and her team have been instrumental in that. But we are also working with our teachers to identify what a rotating Wednesday schedule would look like, because there are some really important activities that are happening on Wednesdays during the office hours. Small groups are meeting, counselors are meeting with kids and doing some course scheduling. So we're not ready yet, but we're getting closer. And probably what would end up happening is we would have the 4 Wednesdays over a course of a month would rotate for which cohort to attend, and probably would still reserve one of the Wednesdays a month as we have all year. That would be a shortened day so everyone connects with their teacher, but also has office hours in the afternoon. So we're still deliberating. One of the issues is that we have low in-person attendance for a number of reasons. As winter sports have started, I would anticipate in-person attendance remaining very low because our student athletes do not want to get infected. No one wants to get infected, but particularly student athletes who have waited all year to play athletics don't want to get infected, and they don't want to be swept up in contact tracing. So a year ago, and for those of you who have students who were also athletes, a year ago, if you didn't come to school, you could not participate. You couldn't practice, you couldn't play games. It is the exact opposite now. And that's one of the unintended consequences, I think, of remote or hybrid instruction. And I understand why families and students want to keep their kids home, because they want to keep them home so they could be more eligible. But long-winded answer to say it's on our radar. We're going to reflect on today's attendance because it was the exact same kids who were invited in today that were yesterday, and it was a pretty significant drop. We're averaging at the middle school and high school about 33%, about 1/3 of the kids who are eligible to come to the middle school and high school for in-person attendance are actually coming. So, for many, many reasons, kids are staying home and families are allowing kids to stay home. So we want to be thoughtful in terms of what we do with Wednesdays going forward. But it's on the radar, but we're not ready to make a decision quite yet.
So does that mean ICT kids are going to be in possibly 5 days a week?
Yeah, that would probably be a good transition to Lisa, if you want to lead with that in terms of your update.
Well, I think one of the things that we can celebrate at Hendrick Hudson is that we actually have ICT kids in 4 days, special class kids in 4 days. 6 through 12. Our most significant ABC or Salar students are in 5 full days now. So we are probably one of the very few school districts in Westchester that can actually do that. So we should really be proud of what we can do. As far as ICT being in 4 or 5 full days, the question would then have to become, that means all teachers would have to report to the buildings. Because right now on Wednesdays, teachers are remote. They are not in the buildings. And that would be a conversation with Joe and the union, because that means every teacher would have to come in, because we have to account for specials and all classes, core and encore classes. So I would love for that to happen. Trust me, Lori, I'm the first one that would say, yes, let's do that. Because I really think that the more kids we can bring in 5 days, the better, whether they're special ed or not, because I think more families are saying to all of us, please get my kids back in. Joe and I had a long conversation today. As you know, I do a lot with social emotional and I oversee that department. And I said to him, the biggest concern I have right now are these kids' social emotional states. My niece is a correction officer and she sent me a text and I read it to Joe and I said, how does this happen that someone walks into a doctor's office and does things to themselves right there in that doctor's office? We're talking about 7 and 8 year olds that were reading about hurting themselves. And we have to really take these things seriously in our schools. And how do we address that? The more kids, whether they're gen ed, they're special ed, they're ENL, who cares? Get them in school. And I think that's the message that Joe is saying is, listen, families were opening the school up, send your students. And I know I had a call from a middle school counselor yesterday, said, listen, this kid wants to come back 4 days. We've offered it to any special ed kid, come back 4 days, we'll take you. And I think this started right after Christmas, and the middle school opened their doors with open arms. The high school was a slow progression because they weren't ready for it. It was very slow, but once they saw the kids coming in and the number of kids that were coming from the high school back, it came to realization that all of our kids could come back. So really, we got as many back as we could. I'm like, let them come. If kids want to come, whether it was yesterday or 2 weeks ago, let them come in. So we are really hoping that we can get kids in as often as we can, up to 5 days. I would love it. So, you know, as
So
I
my
said,
question, you had just said that teachers aren't in, to tell you the truth, I am terribly sorry. I didn't know teachers weren't in on Wednesdays, because in my district, we're remote, but teachers have to go in. We teach from our classroom remotely from our classroom. Be that as it may, if we're going to bring in some kids on Wednesdays, what teachers were there? Like, we brought kids in today, so what teachers were there?
so today was a different day because everybody came in. It was a replacement day. So if we had a snow day on Monday, then Monday would be Wednesday. So that was different. But my special ed teams for the self-contained ABC salaries are in all day on Wednesdays. The rest of the building is not in. So Joe would have to speak to, you know, why they're remote and whatnot. I don't have that luxury of that conversation.
So
Yeah,
I see teachers aren't in on Wednesdays.
No.
Yeah, part of the issue with permitting on the remote days, permitting staff to work remotely was to limit exposure by staff. What some districts had done early on in the school years, they said, you know, we don't care the situation. If we're all remote, that's fine, but come in and work out of the building. And many districts were able to share some specifics that there was actually spread within the teaching staff or the adults because they were congregating. I mean, that we're creatures of habit. They were eating together in the copy room together. And there was some considerable spread. So we made the decision to say, you can come and work out of the building on a remote day. You're always more than welcome to, but you don't have to. Now, today, as Lisa said, was a replacement day because we had majority of our snow days happened on a Monday, Tuesday. We wanted to sync up the amount of in-person days between the two cohorts. So we used today as a way to help get us closer. So all staff were in the building, but we still only had about 1/3 of the kids attend.
Can I jump in here just with a little quick PSA about this? I actually was talking to a group of teachers on Tuesday about this. So just a quick reminder, your kids need to be present. Present on the day that they're supposed to be in school, hybrid, and present electronically on the days that they're home for the hybrid. And present means that we can see you and we can hear you. It is not present if you put your icon up, and because you could be having a jelly sandwich 3 rooms away. So I know teachers are very stressed about this. And I try to say this every time I can when I'm talking with parents. We have more kids failing this year than before, especially at secondary. We talked a lot about, are they failing because the content is too hard, or are they failing because on their hybrid days, they're not showing up? And some kids are not showing up on the hybrid days. They're coming in person, and then the other 3 days, they're who knows where.
I know.
They're going to get left back. I can't condone sending you on if you haven't mastered the work from the prior grade level. And we made that pretty clear in the remote contract language that we sent home to parents. So we need parents to partner with us on this and understand that a 3rd grader may not be going to 4th grade if that's how this year has gone. A 7th grader may not be going to 8th grade if that's how this year has played out. At the high school, it's different because courses individually can be failed and repeated. But it is likely that we will have more kids needing to repeat something next year than we've ever had before. I don't relish that thought. I personally don't believe in retention, but I can't in good conscience, knowing that they lost a chunk of last year and that this year, even though we're giving you the opportunity to participate, you're choosing not to. I can't come to your house and get you. We can move mountains to make up. We have lots of teachers working after school to close gaps for kids. some kids are showing up, some kids are not showing up. So, I beg of you, parents, if you're listening to this, we desperately need you to partner with us on this. We do not want to keep kids from moving forward, but we can't just move them forward because it's the next grade. So please help us, and please reach out to your teachers and your principals. If you know your child is struggling and you're struggling to engage, we would love to work with you to make that work better. I can't stress that enough. When I have teachers coming to me saying, oh my God, I'm worried about, and they go through a list of kids. And some of it is because on those hybrid days, the kid is nowhere to be found.
It's very interesting, Margaret, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that was a conversation I had with some of the social workers recently, is how do we get these kids? Before we could go and get them and make sure we're checking on them, now they're nowhere to be found. And that's the part we're all worried about. And it's not just the fact that they're not attending school or the 2 days that they are in school. Those other 3 days, we're not connecting. At the high school level, we were able to work with Joe, and I worked with the union to make sure a 30-minute duty, we now aligned that they would work closer with kids and or parents and have more touch time with them, whether it's case management time, whether it's to reach out to them, the special ed students. And I have found that it's helped us. But if we can't connect with that family and that student, it's really, it's not enough for us. I wish we had more hours in the day. The middle school does that digital check-in every Wednesday, which has been a great thing for them. So we're all trying to do something different and trying to reinvent some things within the school, but there's only so much we can do. So parents partnering with us is really, really important. If you have questions, you can reach out to any one of us and we will help you. We will work through whatever it is that you need. And we'll do the best we can to reach you, because I think it's important that you understand we are a partner, and we want to make sure that you and your family is successful.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked with the middle school administration about, if we have kids who are in trouble and we're seeing a pattern that they're not engaging on their hybrid days, then reach out to that family and tell them your kid's not hybrid anymore. They're here 4 days a week.
Yep.
We can do that. We have some space in classrooms to add a couple of kids, and we will absolutely do that. If that's the only barrier to preventing a child from finding success, then let's see if we can remove that barrier. But please, as a parent, most of us on this call are parents. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to get through to your own kid. Don't hesitate to reach out and say, look, I've tried everything I can and I can't get Lisa to turn on the computer or to stay in front of it, or I need help with this. And, we'll do whatever we can to help you, because we really need these kids to be well mentally and to be well academically and to be ready to rejoin when we're ready to open for everybody. So however we can help you, we're all sitting, waiting to engage with you and engage with your kids to make sure that all of our kids in the district are where they need to be.
That's right. And I think the one thing that we both feel, I know Margaret and I talk about this quite a bit, is, we have to engage with you academically, but we also have to get to you socially and emotionally before we can engage with you academically. And I think that's one thing that we have to make sure that we are doing as a district. One of the big things that Joe and the board especially has been supportive of is really hiring social workers. And I think we did that at the best time we could, because we didn't know the pandemic was coming, but we have a lot of support for our kids. And we definitely want to make sure that we're utilizing everybody and everybody has access. So please feel free to reach out, and we want to be the conduit to help you and your child within the school system. So I know I feel sometimes like we're preaching to the choir, but we really do want to assist as much as we can. And we say that quite frequently throughout the day. Families that don't know us, I know I had one of the board emails tonight, the public comment, it was from a parent I don't know. So I emailed them and said, hey, can I talk to you today? Because I don't understand your question. I want to be able to answer you. But it was a great conversation. And the question was, I understood the question once we had a conversation, but we talked for like 25 minutes. Woman I've never met, but it was a wonderful conversation. And just those little things and connecting and answering. And, she asked about pre-K, and I said, well, that's Margaret's and that's our big thing. We're so hoping we can get there one day. And she goes, oh, I hope my kids aren't too old by then. So, I think just these little conversations, and we're having more and more of them with people that may or may not know us, have really created some of these close-knit community ties to get you to the next person, which I think is so beneficial. So that's, I know I'm sorry I was so long-winded tonight.
No, thank you both, Lisa and Margaret. Your caring, your compassion, and your passion for what you do clearly comes through in what you're saying. And it is so important that this is a partnership. The school can't do it alone. The parents have to help out. So thank you for keeping those lines of communication open. And I think what you just said really needed to be said. Again, that's we're halfway through the school year.
If,
Since
Lori?
Lisa was talking, can I, we were talking about something before, Lisa, and I think there is a need for at the next, and I know you're doing this already, and I think Joe reached out to you, that some parents, 3 have contacted me, and I'm sure they're going to contact you they were confused about, they think that co-teaching is going away and there's just going to be direct teaching or indirect teaching. So I had 3 parents concerned. So
Absolutely. So what I would love, Lori, if they do that, please have them give me a call. I know Bill was actually a participant. Well,
he said.
Yeah, he was in one of our SEPTA meetings. I think it was like 2 weeks ago. I don't even know anymore. Every day just melts together. I feel like one of the kids, like it's never ending. It's Groundhog Day. And we did have a long conversation, and we have to start thinking about IEPs not just rolling over. More and more what I'm seeing is that an IEP, if I have this, it just rolls over into the next year. And as kids are getting into the middle school and the high school, we need to start looking at data. And what is the data showing us? And what is the data saying that kids need? Not every kid needs ICT, math, English, science, and social studies. That's not the way it works. Because they need one subject does not mean they need it all. So one of the things that we've done this year, actually last year we started in the high school, was a direct consultant English for 12th grade. Because we're realizing
What
the
is
kids
that?
want, I'm
What is
sorry?
that? What is direct
consultant?
consultant?
Yeah. So direct consultant is 120 minutes a week where a special ed teacher will push into the classroom. They give direct instruction to the student within that English time. It's only 120 minutes a week. So if your period's 40 minutes, it would be 3 times a week. So 2 times out of the week, they may see you in the hallway. You may see them for 5 minutes. They've modified the work, the homework. So we started at the high school because we're realizing kids that when they're hitting 11th and 12th grade, by the time they go to college, guess what? There's no one there to support them all the time in the classroom. So what are we setting them up for? Not success, not always failure either. However, we have to start taking that independence and that advocacy and giving it more to the kids and having them start that. So as we had these discussions for the kids coming from 5th to 6th, 6th to 7, 7 to 8, we're doing the same exact thing. We're allowing them to be independent. And as you hear some, we have some staff that will say, well, I'm the parent during the day, I'm this. And, well, that's not your role. Your role is to support them educationally, to support them in the classroom, to create the independence and whatever. So we have started this year, indirect consultant teacher for science and social studies in the middle school for 6 to 7 and for 6th grade and 7th grade. 8th grade is not the same because 8th grade is where they get in science, they are getting a high school credit. They get a high school credit for living environment and possibly algebra. So we've really said, okay, we'll keep the direct consultant teacher, the co-taught class in science, because we want to make sure that the kids are getting the most support they can because they're going for a high school credit in middle school. That's big. So as you get into 6th grade, we're looking at those science and social studies classes. Does every kid need an ICT class? No, they don't. And if you look at their IEPs, that's going to tell you, where are they? What do they need? So we're looking at each kid individually, and we're looking at the data from their IEP, current testing, teacher reports. If your teacher report is telling me you're doing everything with no support, that probably tells me you don't need an ICT class. That indirect is going to be good. And what an indirect consultant is that they are, again, 120 minutes a week, indirectly working with the student through the teacher. They're modifying homework, they're modifying tests, they're modifying assignments, they may be modifying reading. But the beauty of it for the middle school is we're going to set the schedule up, and we haven't set the schedule up yet. We're still waiting for all course selections to go through, but we're setting the schedule up so we have flexibility within that schedule. So we will never let a child fail. but we're really starting to work on that independence and that advocacy at the middle school level. So that's one of the things that that we really have to look at for these students. So we've actually done 7th into 8th grade meetings already. So we've done all of them. 8 had to be rescheduled thanks to our snow. But of the 20, we've had 20 meetings. Mr. Matera or Dr. Wynn have chaired the meetings, and the explanation of indirect consultant, parents have accepted it. The program, we've had no pushback from that. Next month starts the 6th into 7th grade. So I think, the conversations at the CSE table have to look different. And I think hearing it and not being at a table makes people nervous, right? And I think asking people questions, and I think, Bill, how many did we have there? 36, 38 people the other night. And what I found, I think that was about the number we had. But what I found is that most of the people asking the questions were general education parents that didn't have special education students. We had 2 special education parents that were really asking the questions, which was great. And, we got them some feedback afterwards. But the bottom line becomes is sitting at the table looks a little bit different than sitting at a meeting with 38 people. So I think once people get to the table, it'll look a little bit different, but it is a committee decision. It's sitting and talking at a committee and having those discussions about the needs of the students. So I think once we get to the table, I think some people will be calm, but I think it's also, if you do have people reaching out to you, have them reach out to Mr. Matera or myself, and we will definitely sit with them and go over each type of service.
Okay, so if it's indirect, it's only indirect for social studies and science, right?
Yep.
And that person, that teacher actually never meets with the kid?
They don't. They actually have time in their day. It's called a supplement period, which they don't have resource room in the middle school because of the fact that it limits them to 5 kids and that teacher. In supplement, the kids get to go see any teacher they need to see during that time. So it's like a structured study hall with a content support teacher. Does that make sense? And the kids understand it better than I do. I'm probably explaining it very badly. But the kids, if they need math help, they go to you as the math teacher. If they need English help, they go to Margaret as the English teacher. So they also get time during the day. But that being said, what does that direct consultant teacher or the indirect consultant teacher do during the other time? Well, there's time built in their schedule, a little extra time. So what do they do with it? They probably are supporting the classroom. So we're being very flexible in our scheduling of their time. So there's always going to be support for kids no matter what we do.
Does the student know their indirect teacher?
Yes, they will know. Yes, because it'll be the same thing as their math and English teacher.
What happens if the kids start to, so if you're in this ICT or whatever, and you're kind of weaning them off of it,
yep,
if you could call it like that, what happens if they start to not do well again?
Then you come back to the table and we have another discussion.
Okay.
So remember, you can always ask for a request to review, but as you know, I think you work with this model in Elmsford, right?
Yes.
And your model is an AB model, because I think Joanne and I had this conversation a few years ago, is that on A day, you have the teacher, B day, you have a teaching assistant, and then you switch every other day. So that's a model we could look at too. But again,
that's not all the time.
no, but that's what a model should look like if that's what you're going to do with a model like that. So there's different ways of doing it. So it doesn't mean that it's end all to be all, but it's definitely a conversation we need to start having.
Does that indirect consultant have other duties? Like what do they do all day?
Then they also have to do the direct, then they also have to do the ICT, math, and ELA.
So there is.
They'll have a schedule, yeah.
Okay.
That better for you?
Okay, thank you.
I'm actually just asking questions that I'm being asked. So
that's fine.
I want parents.
That's why I said if people call me, that would be better if they call myself or Mr. Matera, and either one of us can work through it with them.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions for our administrators before we move along? Joe, did you have anything else before we move on?
I didn't know if Laura wanted to give any brief
sorry,
updates
Laura,
before we go on to our presentations.
I will be super brief. We just rolled out online registration on February 8th. So this was actually something in the works pre-COVID. but actually ended up being really good timing. So now all of kindergarten registration is being done through Infinite Campus online. Debbie Marriott, as our registrar, is providing support and help and walking through parents if they have questions or any trouble with uploading documents. But we were able to meet with all of the buildings as well. And so the process is rolling out pretty smoothly. So we're pretty excited about this new process. So if you have students that are going to be new to the district in the 21-22 school year, this is not yet the time to register. So right now, this is for any students that are transferring into the school or new kindergarten students for next year. As you might have seen in the lanyard that just came out, the mobile app has been updated quite a bunch, and I have to give a lot of credit and thanks to Beth Gruber for that. She really spearheaded a lot of that work. So we were able to really tweak it and add, I think, a lot of useful icons within the app. So if you haven't yet checked out the Hen HUD app, this is a great time to do it. It's available on the Android or Apple Store. You can, access school bucks. You can access your individual school's site on there. So there's a lot of good, quick steps for parents to be, you want to know what's the lunch today being served. You can just click right away on the lunch menu. And also for staff on the third window, we have some quick links as well for staff, which we find helpful. So definitely check out the app. Working right now on a lot of the data privacy work, reviewing a lot of the contracts that we've captured this year and planning for what next year looks like. We have to get all of the contracts signed yearly. So that means, again, we start with all of our vendors and making sure that we get the Parent Bill of Rights and the specific privacy contract signed. And a lot of that information is updated on the technology website. And then in the personnel world, I don't know, Joe, if you want to speak about it, some updates regarding us getting information regarding our staff and vaccinations. So Joe and I have been discussing our next steps with that. Just keeping up with New York State COVID leave, and then just the regular everyday work that's happening. So.
Yeah, I'll get involved real quickly. This is another example of school district really sort of working out a title. In addition to all the other duties where we have taken on this year on behalf of the governor or the county health department, another one is that we have been asked by way of governor's executive order on Monday. That was a surprise to everybody, that school districts in New York State are to report every Friday the number of teachers, not staff, teachers that have been vaccinated or have been vaccinated. So we can't demand that they tell us. We can only report what we're told. And I think the idea is, just so everyone hears us, I mean, we heard earlier from Margaret and Lisa talking about more kids coming to school. The governor, his passion is to try to get everyone in the education field vaccinated so we can open up and return to normal. I don't know what normal will look like, but he's really trying to accelerate vaccinations, and he's trying to determine who is and who isn't vaccinated. The county executive is trying to determine who is and who isn't vaccinated, and is asking school districts for numbers every week to determine if they need to take their show on the road and actually come and vaccinate staff on site. So it's a very, very big push, I think, to try to get as many vaccinated as possible. I think it's to feel more comfortable with relaxing some of the social distancing policies and practices in order to get more kids in classrooms. Luckily, we have elementary schools open every day for those that want to come. But at the middle school and high school, we'll certainly welcome more, but under the restrictions of the executive order, we can't have everyone in all the time yet. But just another example of how the school district is helping execute the governor's plan, and we'll roll that out as of this Friday. That's what the executive order states.
All right, so I think that concludes our superintendent's report. Our next portion of our meeting will be our committee reports. Does anybody have a committee report tonight? Lisa?
We had right before break a series of meetings with legislators and our New York State representatives to talk about our advocacy efforts. Later in the meeting, we're going to be discussing a resolution that kind of came out of that pool, but I just wanted to express that we did get a chance to meet. Alex and I went and met together with Sandy Galiff, and then Alex was able to go and meet with Senator Harcum. And it was just, they were really good meetings. And I thought that they were quite enlightening. And we wanted to be sure to also thank Laura Nyer and Enrique, because I understood they put together some data for us to use that the representatives have been requesting as far as COVID expenses went. And Enrique was involved with that too. So thank you so much for helping with those things. And I'm sure it'll be very helpful for everyone to have that information so that they can advocate more for additional funds for our schools to help with those situations. The other thing we had with Westchester Putnam School Board Association, there was another town hall. And again, these are the phone calls that happen between presidents, vice presidents in our region. And a lot of the discussion on this one was a lot of school districts aren't like us. They didn't have their kindergarten through 5 in person every day, 5 days a week. And they're struggling now to make that happen. And so there was a lot of the conversation was how can we get more of our kids in, and this issue of the distancing and the social distancing, 6 feet, 3 feet. And it's complicated and it's difficult, and it's things that the whole entire region is really struggling with. We also talked about just needing clear guidance from our State Department of Health and our County Department of Health as far as what the rules are. And, until we can get that guidance, it's really difficult as districts to know what we can and should be doing. And the last little point was just discussing difficulties with vaccination appointments and supply of vaccines. And high-risk sports was another topic that we discussed. This was a few weeks ago when the high-risk sports were just beginning, and so we talked about that happening as well.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Alex, for attending those meetings. Does anybody else have a committee report they'd like to share? Okay. That brings us to our presentations. I believe we're doing our facilities committee presentation first, Joe, unless we're switching things around. I don't know.
Sure, I'll turn it over to Enrique, and Anthony Merlini is with us as well.
Good evening, everyone. Anthony will make the presentation, and if you have any questions, either him or me will answer. So, Anthony, go ahead.
Sure. Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm Anthony Merlini, Director of Facilities, and I'm here to present the Facilities Operation Maintenance proposed budget for the 21-22 school year. Next. So I always like to start out with the budget cost drivers, talk a little bit about utilities, and just to give you an idea of where we are and what we experienced during the course of the year. NIPA is our electrical provider. Overall cost, we anticipate them to increase along with our solar PPA and natural gas, approximately 1.5% in the coming school year. This year we expended $155,000 to date on electrical costs through NIPA. And our utility budget for the 21-22 is approximately the same as last year, $563,000. And you can see the breakdown for solar, electrical provider NIPA, and Con Edison, which provides our gas, and electric for our ball field lights. In the current bond, to help with our costs, we installed some exterior solar wind powered LED lighting at FGL. And if you remember, we really didn't have any street lighting at the Frank G. Lindsay facility. So with this bond, we have the opportunity to put some lighting there on the outside, so the parking lot is better lit at night. We installed some exterior wall pack LED lights at Buchanan Plank, and we installed LED lighting in the renovated areas district-wide. So as we were doing renovations to the different spaces, we always look to put the best lighting that we can. So we have LED lighting with occupancy sensors going into those spaces. We're considering additional LED lighting, possibly through another energy performance contract. The last one we did, we went from T12s to T8 lighting, and now we have the opportunity to potentially go to LED, and that'll help us in the future with our costs as well. Next slide. Just some solar data. So if you remember, we have 5 buildings that produce solar power. Solar power accounts for about 40% of the district needs. Since inception in March of 2016, we produced 4,155 megawatt hours since we've been running it. And the following data shows what we've been producing per building. So the high school, the middle school, Furnace Woods, Frank G. Lindsay, and Buchanan Verplank. And from that data, you can see our biggest array is at Furnace Woods. And during this 2020 actually the 2020 year, we ran completely on solar from February through December at Furnace Woods. At Buchanan Verplank during 2020, it ran on solar from July through December. And at Frank G. Lindsay, it ran on solar 7 out of the 12 months. So to give you an idea of, what the solar arrays has the capacity to do. Granted, our occupancy during 2020 in the spring was less than normal, and we curtailed as much as we could, but it shows how we defrayed that cost and we put it onto solar. Next. Some other utilities, we have our fuel oil. The cost per gallon of oil has decreased from last winter. Last year was $1.85 per gallon. This year it's $1.73 per gallon, and we expect it to rise. One of the reasons why that seems a little odd, because if you've been going to the pump and been seeing the fuel prices, they are coming back up again. But from last year to this year, it has dipped because over the summer, it dipped drastically. Our fuel oil prices were ridiculously low over the summer and into the fall. Some of the fuel saving measures that we do with the bond, we did a lot of exterior door replacement, so that'll help tighten up the building envelope. Our guys watch the forecast and plan accordingly, and potentially we'll do another energy performance contract, EPC. Propane, it increased in cost from last year at this time, and the budget for propane will increase slightly in 2021-22, even though we don't really have to move the numbers that much in our actual physical budget. Natural gas usage and costs lower than last year, but those prices are slightly lower than last year, and then we expect those to increase slightly in the 21-22 school year. Next. So here are some of the numbers. Our non-instructional salaries have increased. The dollar change is about $68,000, which represents a 2.4% increase. For equipment, we moved that number up a little bit. We actually took some money out of our professional services and moved it into equipment. Professional services, we had some regulatory requirements that we have to do this year in terms of testing and things like that. And next year, we don't have that same requirement. So we took that out and we moved it over into equipment. And you can see those different cost variables there. Contractual, insurance, maintenance contracts, and materials and supplies, we kept them the same for the upcoming year. Next. So utilities, oil, we did bump that up a little bit, $8,000, which represents a 3.2% increase for the coming year. Electric and gas, I think we're going to do okay with that, so we kept that the same. Municipal water, we don't expect an increase or drastic. Telephone, gas, and our maintenance projects, we kept the same. So the bottom line, we're looking at about a $76,000 increase overall, which represents a 1.6% change. Next. that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Hey,
Thank you,
Anthony.
Anthony.
Hey, Corey.
Hey, I've got one question, Anthony. So for the solar, I see that, we had a lot of solar generation in 2020 and we had very little snow last year. This year we've got a ton of snow. Do you guys clean off the solar panels after the snows to continue generation?
We generally do not do that, only because it's not our system. It's a power purchase agreement. So they're owned by, it's not Sun Edison anymore, Terra Firm, but it's their product. So if they see a drastic change in something, they'll come out and they'll do repairs and they come out and do the cleaning. We don't like to do that only because it's not our system. And it is, you don't want people up there it's tight to walk between the panels and everything. So it's not really a safe situation to go up there. Roofs can get icy in the winter. You don't want anybody slipping off the roof. So it's not really a safe environment for my guys to go up there.
Okay, so we don't own the systems then. What is the $120,000 for that we pay for solar if we're not paying back the loan?
So it's through a power purchase agreement. So what we do, how it works is we pay for everything it generates. So as long as it's generating power that we're using, we pay for that, and that's how it works. So if it doesn't generate any power because it has snow on it, obviously we switch back to NYPA. NYPA's our electrical provider. So there's really no hurt for us. It's more in their interest if they have a damaged system or if their power inverters are not working. It behooves them to come out here and get the system up and running.
So is the benefit to us then we're just paying a lower cost per kilowatt hour than we would to NYPA?
So yes. So what it does is it also streamlines our pricing or flatlines our pricing. So we know what it is. So several years ago, and the same thing that's happening down in Dallas now or Texas now, if their prices spike for some reason or our prices spike for some reason, we have the ability to pay for solar, and we know what that cost is going to be. So what it does is it helps us hedge our bet where we're going to be product-wise and cost-wise. So several years ago, when we had a really bad winter, we had the polar vortex, we wound up paying, 1 month cost us an extra $70,000 in our electric bill. So this, because we're running on solar, we're trying to hope or hedge our bet that we won't get hit with something like that and kind of streamline our costs.
Okay, and what is the life on the equipment, given that it sounds like we're leasing the equipment?
It's
a purchase. It's a purchase, and it's for 20 years. After 20 years, we buy the equipment for $1, basically. If we want, but so the cost, the total cost, not for us, the total cost for us was $0. But the total cost to install the system was about $2.6 million. Out of that $2.6 million, around $2 million was the cost of installation and $600,000 the cost of the panels. Yeah. So in 20 years, we assume that there's going to be much better panels, and it won't cost us to have to take them out. The same company that are the owners today, if they are the owners in 20 years and we decide that it's more efficient, or whomever is in my position and Anthony's position decides that it's more efficient to go to new ones, then you just call the company that installed this and you say, please take them out, and that's it. Or if we see that there's been no upgrades in the panels, then we buy them for $1.
And if we assume ownership, does that mean then that we get the full benefit of whatever we generate?
Yes. Then we own it. Then we own the whole system.
So we're only paying this company per kilowatt hour that's generated, nothing for the equipment.
Correct.
Nothing. and it didn't cost us anything to install it, and it doesn't cost us anything to run it.
Okay, and how far into the 20 years are we? Just trying to.
This is the 6th year. Next year is going to be the 6th year, Anthony.
Yeah, 2016 they were installed.
Okay, so in 14 years, then whatever we generated will be ours.
If we decide to keep them.
There might be panels that are more efficient. Might not be worthwhile.
Right. Okay.
But so you know, at this point, the increase is 1.5% per year. We're paying about 17 cents now, Anthony.
For them, yeah, somewhere around there, maybe a little less.
Compared to about 22 cents for night.
Okay, so we're
always way below.
Like a 5-cent differential.
Yes.
And that's where we're making the money. Okay.
Yeah, saving the money. Yeah.
Saving. Okay. But we have to make up, like, when do we break even on the 2.6 million that we spent?
No, we didn't spend anything. That's what I was saying.
Oh, okay.
You see, someone else spent the $2.6 million to have a contract with us to buy them electricity at a specific price over the next 20 years.
So we let them do that for 5 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
Which is saving us tens of thousands of dollars per year.
Right.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Anthony. Now,
Thank you.
now is Liz's turn.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Good.
Yep.
Good.
Good evening, everybody. So Enrique and I have worked very hard on putting this together, and here we go. Okay, Greg, next. Okay, so we're continuing, every year to improve the route efficiency to better serve the community. The big thing is when we go to the Princeton plan, there's going to have to be a lot of understanding from families that we're going to have to be utilizing gang stops as much as possible. Of course, on roads that are dangerous, we're not going to be able to do that. But we have a lot of elementary kids that are still being picked up at their driveways. And they're living in developments where they absolutely, need to be able to walk out to the corner. So I just want, that's a very big thing. I tried to do that this year and I got numerous phone calls, my kid's always been picked up at the end of the driveway. Why do I have to walk, 50 yards down the street to put my kid on the bus? And my driveway's a 1/4 mile long and, those kind of things. So we really need to, have parents understand that we need to start to utilize gang stops. Okay, we continue to use the shared services model. We really aren't using that this year because of COVID. All of the districts in the group all decided that with the limited seating on the buses and with the implications of COVID, that we all would bus our own children, our own students to the out-of-district programs. But we're hoping to get back into shared services next school year. In fact, all the new contracts went out and have all been signed and returned. I think that perhaps you guys have already approved that, so we already have our part of it done. And Enrique and I are also continuing to explore the possibility of adding electric vehicles to the fleet. The governor has put a directive forward that by 2025, each school district in New York State has to have a specific percentage of electric buses in their fleet in order to reduce emissions from diesel and gasoline vehicles. So we're looking at the costs associated with doing that. Next. This year, as always, our drivers receive their annual recertification for EpiPen administration and also for dealing with diabetic emergencies and seizure disorders. The drivers also receive training on proper cleaning techniques and disinfecting techniques in order to meet the CDC and Department of Health protocols in order to manage COVID COVID-19 virus. Okay. I also this year need to replace both hydraulic lifts at the bus garage. Both are 20 years old. We can't acquire the parts in which to repair them, and they will not pass inspection again. So this is, obviously a very important piece of equipment that is used in the bus garage in order to repair our buses, and it is something that we're, going to have to do. Their replacement was not anticipated, because had it been, had we known that, then we would have thought about, doing maybe one with this previous budget and not have to put both of them onto the next budget. Next, yep, there you go. We received delivery on one 72-passenger Bluebird Transit style school bus this year, and we also received delivery on 3 28-passenger vans. And we are awaiting delivery on one small utility vehicle that we purchased for grounds maintenance, which will probably, I think it's probably will go to the high school, but we've already worked with the vendor to get that ordered and everything. We're just waiting for it to arrive. Okay. Next year, I would like to purchase one dual-wheeled wheelchair bus. The approximate cost is $72,000. We need to purchase one 72-passenger transit-style bus with a cost of about $149,000, and then to replace the 2 hydraulic lifts in the bus garage. So the ban for this budget year for this next coming budget year would be $525,000 in the ban. Next. So as we go through my my budget here, we have the salary and the non-instructional. Everything is just in keeping with what the CSEA contract is, their 2% increase. I left, let's see, we left the field trips the same. We didn't increase that, nor did we increase sports overtime either. Next. Yes, my transportation line stays the same, as does my contractual expense. Materials and supplies also stays the same. I increased fuel by $15,000, anticipating that if we do go to the Princeton plan for the 21-22 school year, there's going to be an increased consumption of fuel with the buses, because the buses are obviously going to be driving greater distances. So that's what that increase is there. And then the other 2 lines stay the same. Next. And same thing, this is the insurance, the auto liability, and then our umbrella policy. So those both stay the same. Next. Okay, so garage equipment, I increased that line by $5,000. There is some, I'm anticipating that when we start to replace the lifts, there may be some remediation that's going to have to be done. And the cost to remove any contaminated soil is going to have to be accounted for. So that's what that extra $5,000 is there. Contractual expenditures at the garage stays the same. My natural gas stays the same, as does water and electricity. And my property and general liability insurance also is the same. And then my material and supplies for the bus garage also stays the same with no increase. So overall, that budget increase is $76,823 for a 2.1% overall budget increase for transportation. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, Liz, I just have one question.
Sure.
So you made an assumption, if we were to go to Princeton plan, that there'll be an extra $15,000 in fuel costs, which assumes additional miles and usage. So why wouldn't tires and other maintenance also go up if the mileage is going to be higher on all the buses?
I'm not really anticipating that the cost of the tires is going to go up greatly.
Well, you're saying
I'm not thinking I'm going to have to buy that many more tires, but I think that we're going to be replacing tires that frequently. But But
I'm
I
just
do,
asking because tires are rated on a mileage basis, right?
Right.
And the more you use them, the more you have to replace them. So if we're saying we're going to use $15,000 more worth of fuel, that means we're going to have significant number of miles, right? So wouldn't that increase
well,
tires?
I don't know if it's going to be a
Maybe.
significant number more of miles, but I think that with, with fuel, as fuel increases and as fuel consumption increases, then we're going to, that's why I'm looking to increase that line at some point.
All right, I'm just thinking like if it was $2 a gallon, wouldn't that be 7,500 more miles, I guess? Or is it, am I doing
Yeah.
math there? Right?
No, you're correct.
Because how many miles a gallon? You only get like
Yeah, you only get about 12 miles to go on a bus.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that increasing it by that, I do have a little bit of cushion in that line. So that's why I didn't increase it, astronomically. But if I see that I need to add, money into, the tires and that, then I have money where I can, possibly move if need be. But I don't see that that's going to be a huge increase.
Liz, I have a question relating to, all similarly with the Princeton plan. What about salaries for our bus drivers with the Princeton? If we go to the Princeton plan,
they would stay the same because no matter what, I still have the custodians in the building. It's the same number of drivers. It wouldn't be an increase in positions.
so it wouldn't. Okay, so it would not produce an increase in any positions.
No.
So it's not. There would be no hourly impact if they have to drive further and longer?
Yes, but we don't need to increase the number of custodians. Maybe we'll need to have some overtime as the custodian part because they are driving more time. But from the standpoint of driving, the portion that we charge to driving, we don't expect we don't expect to need any new drivers.
I just get the sense that maybe we're underestimating the additional costs because my math before was wrong, right? So if we're saying it's 15,000 more in fuel, let's say it's $2 a gallon, that's 7,500 gallons at 10 miles per gallon conservatively, that's 75,000 more miles we're going to be driving. Right? Is that, I don't know if, Bill and Enrique, correct me if I'm wrong there.
No,
Just want to make sure that we're not, overestimating the savings here.
It's the first, if we move to Princeton, it's the first time that we move to Princeton. So it's going to be the first time that Liz and I have to budget under different circumstances. For example, this year we had the same amount in money for tires. So probably some of the tires that we bought that we're not going to need to use because we thought that this was a normal year and we have less buses in the street, we'll use those tires for next year. Liz and I discussed all those issues. We feel comfortable that we'll be fine. Maybe for the following year, we'll see that we're a little bit short in portions, and then we'll adjust it for the following budget. But definitely, it's a new budget. It's not something that we have experienced like the rest of the budget. But Liz and I feel comfortable that even if it's a couple of $1,000, we'll be able to find the money somewhere else.
And actually, Corey, to go to answer further your question, Liz, how many buses do we have?
Right now, currently, to transport students in the morning, I use 14. And that doesn't count the vans that I use for the out-of-district and special education in-district runs. So for my high school arrivals in the morning, I use 14 and 14 for the middle school, and those same 14 buses do my 3 elementary schools.
So Corey, if you divide that 75,000, you're estimating miles divided by 14, you're talking about 5,000 miles of vehicle. which you're not going to see a significant change in tire cost based on 5,000 miles of vehicle.
Right.
Correct.
But
And the
there is-
vehicles are only serviced every 5,000 miles.
Right, so it's probably one extra service then for all the vehicles.
Correct, just one.
Okay, so service, how much is the cost of service on the vehicle, per vehicle? Couple $100, few $100 times 14. I'm just saying that there's an additional cost, but besides the 15.
But most of the, Corey, most of the cost of servicing the vehicles is not parts, it's labor. It's like when you take your car, if you look at the cost of servicing, the oil might be $20 and they charge you $300 because it's labor. And for us, labor will be, it doesn't matter if they'll need more service because they are our own employees.
Right. The own employees, it's our, and if they, on a PM, they're going to do oil change, fluid changes or top offs if they need to. They're going to check the brakes, do the readings on the brakes and stuff. They don't change brakes every 5,000 miles. It depends on what the needs are and what the measurements are.
Right. Okay.
And we also buy in bulk, so that saves us with it. It's not like we're buying a 1 quart can of oil. We're buying 55-gallon drums of oil at a time.
Right.
So it's, we buy everything in bulk that way.
You think about gas maybe going to $5 a gallon?
No, well, we're lucky because we operate underneath the state contract, so we're able to, get our fuel prices at reasonable. Reasonable rates. I mean, still though, from January. From my fuel that I ordered in January to the fuel that I ordered, for February, it went up 30 cents a gallon. So, but everybody wants to blame, the election on that, but it's really not that. It's that it was so cheap in the summertime. We were paying $1.14 per gallon for gasoline in the summer, and only $1, and I think we paid $1.18 a gallon for diesel fuel. Now I think really the prices, and I compare them to what I paid last year at this time, the prices are pretty much, they're a little bit lower. So we're not over what we spent last year. So.
Alex, go ahead.
So looking at the line item budget, I don't see the cost of the hydraulic lifts. So is that going to be part of your budget, or how are we paying for that
in the
this year?
It's in the ban.
That's going to be in a separate proposition like we do every year. Every year we have a separate proposition to buy the buses or equipment that we need for the buses. So that's going to be a separate proposition besides the budget.
That people will vote on in May.
Yes. And the way it works is that we issue bonds for 5 years. So basically we pay the buses over a 5-year period like that. We don't suddenly, the years that we need more buses, suddenly we need to pay $500,000. So for example, in this case, we will be paying over the next 5 years about $110,000 for this bond. Per year.
So, but what happens if it doesn't pass and this work has to be done anyway?
Then there's 2 things that we can do. Number one, we can use the repair reserve to try to repair them. Number 2, there's a law under New York State municipal law that if it's an emergency, we do it. And we just add it to the budget. But the board will have to declare it an emergency.
Okay, thank you.
And it's the same, Alexandra, it's the same as if 1 year we're in contingent budget, meaning that the budget doesn't pass. We cannot use, all the equipment money goes away. We cannot buy any equipment under contingent. So we need, if anything breaks, we need to fix it rather than to buy a new one. And actually that happened to me when I was in Amityville. When I came there, we were in contingent and we needed a sampler for the winter. It cost more to fix the one that we had than to buy another one, a new one. But because of municipal law, we couldn't buy the new. And by the way, always, for the last, I think, 25 years, the transportation has always passed at a much higher rate than the budget, and it has never failed.
Knocking on wood, Enrique.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I'm just talking history.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else have any? Allie, did you have another question? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Liz.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll just give a 5 minutes update to where we are in our budget, because we got news from the state and from different parts of where we look at the budget. So Greg, next one, please. Next one. So the good news is that the teachers' retirement system final ECR means employer contribution rate is 9.8. Originally, we thought it was going to be 10%. So that's a reduction of $67,000 in the budget. We had 2 teachers' retirement. That's a reduction of $124,000. And then state aid decreased, but decreased very little compared to other school districts. It only decreased about $160,000, which is less than 2%. In general, it was about 20% the reduction in state aid for the whole state. That means that we did pretty well. That ours was only decreased by 2%. Next. So under the status quo, in January 6, we talked about a budget of $84.6 million. Now we're down to 84.1. Compared to last year, is an increase of $2,044,000 compared to $2.4 million in January. So we're talking about a percentage increase of 2.5%. The preliminary tax levy is $49,340,000 compared to $49,587 in January. So it's a decrease compared to January 6 of 0.5 percentage point to 6.5. Next. So if we stay under the status quo, our tax levy calculation will be the following. Our state aid, like I said, went down to about $160,000. Our non-property taxes will be $34.8 million. Our proposed budget, 84.1. 49.3 in our proposed tax levy. Going forward, I expect an increase in budget of 2.4% the next year, and then 0.6% the following year, and an increase in tax levy of 7.3 and 6.1% the following year. Next. Under the Princeton plan, in January 6, we were talking about $82.7 million. Now we're talking about $82.2 million, an increase of $135,000, and a percentage increase of 0.2%. The preliminary tax levy is 48.2 compared to 48.3, and an increase of 4.2% in the tax levy compared to 4.4% in January 6. And that's my update for tonight. So I think that what is important is, again, there's a substantial difference between the Princeton plan and the status quo in the proposed budget. The reason why the status quo tax levy is not higher is because we're putting a lot more fund balance under the status quo budget than under the Princeton plan, and that is because we're trying to avoid peak and valleys and try to keep it as smooth as possible. So now I'll take any questions if you have any.
Looks like we don't have any questions, Enrique. Thank you.
I just want to remind the board that basically by the end of next month is when the board is going to vote for the budget that we present to the community. So we have basically 5 weeks, and I'm encouraging everyone, the board, the community, to ask questions. So when it's time to vote, everyone is comfortable with what was presented.
Okay, thank you. So our next section this evening is our board comments, new business. We're talking about a resolution this evening, and Lisa will be presenting that.
Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier tonight, there is a resolution that Westchester Putnam School Board Association put together that I'd like to propose that we consider. And I guess I should begin by reading it. Or maybe I should just explain, first of all, that what it is it's taking all of the different points that we found that are in the governor budget that present difficulties and problems for school districts as far as funding goes. And it outlines each of those items. It talks about the STAR rebate, STAR relief being put into our school aid budgets. It talks about the federal funds being used to supplant the regular amounts of money that the governor puts into the state aid. It talks about consolidation of these expense-based aids and just the problems that are with all of those items. There's quite a big list of them, as you can see as we scroll through it. I feel comfortable with all of the different items that are in this resolution, that they are, things that we should be concerned about as well as districts. And I think that it'll be very helpful for us to be able to have this resolution passed so that we can go on the record as being in solidarity with the other districts in our region with the impact of the governor's budget proposal on our schools. So shall I begin? Are there any questions about it, or shall I begin reading it, or what's the best way to go, Carol?
Did everybody have a chance to look this over prior? It was sent last week. I'm getting a lot of nods. Okay, so we need a motion to put the resolution up for discussion, first of all. And then once we have it up for discussion, we could treat it like a policy where you can start reading, someone can waive further reading, we can have our discussion, and then we can have a motion to adopt the resolution if we choose to do that. So can I have a motion to present this resolution for discussion?
So
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay. So Lisa, if you want to start reading.
Sure. This is a resolution for New York State funding of public education. Whereas every student in New York State should have access to a quality public education regardless
Waive the move reading.
Thank you. So Does anybody have any questions or comments about this resolution? It's fairly self-explanatory, if you had a chance to look at it. I think it's very important to support our neighboring districts in this state. You know, we have kind of a unique circumstance at the moment, and we're very fortunate that we only had our funding cut by, you know, around 2%. But there are a lot of districts that are getting much larger cuts at a time when it is incredibly difficult to be facing those cuts. So I would be in support of this resolution. Does anybody else have any comments?
Can I ask a weird question? I don't know if it's
Sure.
weird, but under all of these different packages that have been passed, whether it was last year or what's coming, and they keep saying there's billions of dollars left over, have we received any of that money, and what did we do with it? You know, they say, oh, there's so much money for schools, etc. From the last administration, from this administration,
Are you talking about the federal level, Lori?
yeah.
The federal government? With this particular one, what's happening, from my understanding, and Enrique, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just that the governor is, that money is coming in, and then he's kind of backfilling the state budget in the education department with that money. So it's, he's not actually getting any more because it's not going to help us with the COVID expenses. It's just going to help pay for our regular budgets that we would
Exactly, Lisa. If you look at our...
No, I know that. That's what I was just saying. Did we
but
get any of that
if you look at our state aid sheet, it's very clear. It says a reduction in state aid, $160,000. Payment from the federal government to the state for Henry Hudson, $160,000. So all the money that we're getting from the federal government is being reduced by the state government, so we don't get more. So it's just, money is the same, it's just from where is it coming and who's taking it. But yeah, I mean, we've been receiving money from the federal, but we've been losing from the state.
And part of the concern is that what happens when the federal money dries up and the state is still relying on it so heavily, we could be on this cliff where there's this huge shortfall when that money goes away.
And actually today there was an article in the Wall Street Journal that the governor of New York and other high tax states want to start increasing taxes for the very high earners. I don't know how many of $10 million plus, but that's how they are planning to do it, to increase for people that make more than, I don't remember, $2 or $5 million a year.
Do you have any more questions or comments about this resolution? All right, Lisa, would you like to make a motion to approve this resolution?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of approving the resolution on New York State funding of public education?
Aye.
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 Any not in favor? All right, resolution passes. We will forward that on to the appropriate governmental personnel. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa, for spearheading that.
Carol, real quick, we have a video from the
we do.
Facilities Committee.
Okay.
Greg, I think you're gonna get that ready. It's well, I don't even want to spoil it, but we have a video for the public and the board to enjoy.
From the high school students, they made a video for the board and for the whole community that I hope you like.
That was very nicely done. Thank you for sharing it. I can't wait to actually be able to enter the buildings again and see the work that's been done. Hopefully sometime later in the spring or the summer, the board will be able to do their facilities tour and inspection. And I greatly look forward to that.
Thank you.
If I can say, I am so proud of this only because we are, I know a few school districts, but we constantly just keep getting better. And I am so thankful to the community for passing bonds that they do, and for our administration and teachers and everybody who comes up with all of these great ideas, that we just never stop trying to get better and better and better, and not being stingy. You know, so many people in such tight, these are hard times, and we still want to do everything possible to make this district, like Joe says, a destination district. And it's really shows all the time. And I just hope people are just so appreciative of what goes on in these buildings. So kudos.
And what a great job on the video from our students and our clubs. That was excellent. All right, giving a pause there for more comments, which brings us to me asking the board if anybody else has any new business before I move to the next section.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to bring this up because I know some parents wanted to hear. We talked about this again before too. There's a lot of concerns about teachers have to be absent. That just goes without saying because of our situation, but they're concerned about a lot of kids having freeze and being sent to the cafeteria. And, you know, they don't really know what's going on and who's doing the supervising. And like I said before, all of our kids are in need these days. So I'm hoping that we're looking into the amount of subs that we have, how we're using different people. And Joe spoke of it before, and he said he was going to check with Mr. Mackin that maybe we can get different kids into different places, because quite frankly, a lot of the parents weren't aware that kids were just being herded into the cafeteria, and teenagers being teenagers, you know, they prefer to do other things, and what kind of learning is going on. And right now, I just feel that every kid is a special ed kid and every kid needs certain attention. So if we could just talk about that a little bit, I would appreciate it, to let the parents know that we're considering what's going on.
I can jump in a little bit just on the staffing. I can share that it is an extreme shortage right now to find teachers, subs, teaching assistants, anybody. It's been a real struggle. And I have to say that the building administration, Lisa at PPS, they have been working tirelessly, combing through resumes, trying to hire people. And often we will finally find a candidate, and then that candidate may decide to turn us down because there's another district that's more competitive in salary, or there's just not qualified candidates out there. So in general, we try to have a set number of building subs in each building. We've been unable to fill all of those roles this year. It's been a real challenge. We have not been using our regular subs that normally go between different districts. Because of COVID, we do not want staff in our district and then in 2 other districts during the week. So we've only been using our permanent per diem subs that actually report every single day and then get assigned where there's a need. We often use our teaching assistants. They get paid a differential to work as a sub if there are no substitutes and a teacher is out, but we are short on teaching assistants, and we are short on aides. So it has just been, it's been very difficult to fill these positions. And then we also just have people who are out on leaves, medical leaves, COVID-related quarantines, maternity leaves. So, and again, this is, I always say, like, it goes through waves, ebb and flow of staffing for education. This is the time that someone who wants to get a teaching job can get one, because they're just, the supply and demand is the challenge right now. So, and we don't honestly pay as well as a lot of other districts when it comes to our substitutes.
I agree with you.
So that, and we've increased it. We've increased our rate of pay. And we did that last year, but it's, I know I'm on the receiving end of the conversation with the potential candidates who will turn me down because I'm not offering them enough, or that they have an offer somewhere else that pays more. We have a lot of great benefits, and I think a lot of times we do get the great people we have because they want to, just like you said, Lori, we're the kind of district people want to be in. So oftentimes we will have people who will be willing to take a pay cut to come work for us because they want to work in our school district. But at the same time, we still lose really good candidates. And, I know Lisa can speak to it. She's constantly trying to fill positions for whatever reason they may be. And special ed is very specific, and we need the right qualified people. And it's been really tough this year.
I think, Laura, this particular year, like you said, it's been tough for every school district, specifically for teacher aides, teaching assistants. This is not a problem of Henry Hudson or of money this year, but it's a problem, like you said, that the people do not want to take the risk for $120 a day. They prefer to stay home. The government, in that sense, is good that it's helping with all this money that sends to people. But if I'm getting the same amount of money from the government, why should I go and work and risk myself? So that's a real problem this year. I mean, I've been trying to help, like even our security people, they are working every day overtime to try to help in the hall, so teacher aides and teaching assistants can be in the classroom, but it's very tough. I mean, across between COVID, my child has COVID and I need to stay home and quarantine and everything. We just don't have the staff to be able to replace a teacher when the teacher is not there.
I get that. And Joe had mentioned before that Enrique, I'm in a school. I know how hard it is, but I know that Lisa had mentioned and Joe said it, I forget, that even though we have TAs and assistants, don't they only get to stay with the SPED kids? And what about our other subs? Our other subs, I know we get what we get, but some of the parents are saying like the subs just sit there and like.
No, our subs are used. I mean,
I know they're used, but are they being effective? Are they?
Yes, they are, and some of them are really good. But at the end of the day, a teacher aide cannot be a classroom teacher. They seem.
So that's not what I'm saying. I know, like they're just reserved for special ed.
No, not only for special ed, but in a normal year, they are the ones that make the photocopies, that do the menial work, because that's why we have teaching assistants.
How many TAs do we
Lori,
have?
This sounds like one of those, Enrique, just a sec. This sounds like one of those situations where if certain parents are coming to you with an issue that their child is not attending while they're in alternative spaces and their teachers are teaching remotely because they're quarantined or whatever, maybe they should reach out to the administrators at the high school, and maybe Margaret and Lisa and the admins at the high school can help them out with that. Maybe those students need a little extra support that they're not getting, and it's the partnership thing. The kids are high school kids. They have to be a little bit attentive and hopefully are able to do some things independently. But if they're not, maybe they need that extra support, like we were talking about earlier. Okay, so I hope the parents are going to reach out. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to get to the cafeteria and sit there and.
But again, Lori, we really have limited supply of subs. And so, like I said, we're not using, so we have two levels of subs. We have our permanent per diem subs, which are certified teachers, and they are paid a daily rate to show up every day. And they have the guarantee of the job for the year. And they're only working Hendrick Hudson. And they're phenomenal. And a lot of those subs we've had have become probationary teachers, permanent teachers in the district. Then you have your regular daily sub that gets paid a much lower rate of $72 a day. We're not hiring them this year because we do not want people going back and forth between other school districts or even buildings. So our permanent subs are assigned to a building and they report to that building every day. And they are being used above and beyond. The challenge is that we have not been able to fill all of those vacancies. So we don't have enough permanent per diem subs. And then our teaching assistants.
Wait, say that again, because my thing was going to say, why don't we hire some more permanent subs for this year? But what did you just say?
Can't find them because most certified teachers right now are getting jobs as teachers. And or like Enrique said, it's not worth it for them to come work for us for $125 a day. We're able to get some people who want job experience, maybe they're fresh out of college, you know, they're trying to get into the workforce or break into this area or our school district, but we have not been able to fill all of the vacancies. And the same goes with teaching assistants. It's been very hard to hire and keep teaching assistants. We've had a lot of resignations of teaching assistants. So we've just been struggling to try to fill those positions because teaching assistants, if they're not assigned to special ed, especially at the elementary level, you have your general ed teaching assistants. They can then serve at times as a substitute teacher, but there is a shortage.
Are they doing that? Do we have RTAs and everybody subbing in the other classrooms? And because I know there's a cost. I know, right, Joe? You said that before. They get said that? Somebody said they get paid if they do that. Like,
yes, of
like
course.
I don't care at that point. Like, put them in the classrooms if they're not.
Yeah,
I'd rather have a sub. I'd rather have a TA in a classroom with kids and sending those kids to the cafeteria.
Well, Lori, understand if one of the principals was on tonight with us, they would tell you there is nobody who is just sitting around. We had to very carefully negotiate some things that have to happen in order to make sure we had coverage everywhere. There are more TAs at the elementary level because of the nature of the work. At secondary, there are fewer TAs and more of that assistance is tied to a special ed class or a student. So there's a little bit more flexibility, but I can guarantee you that even in a non-COVID year, there isn't a permanent sub in this district who comes to work one day and has nothing to do.
Oh, I agree. I know with that. But Joe, I liked what you said before too, that you're going to talk and maybe get a little bit creative. Like if there's 3 kids in a social studies classroom and 1 kid in a special ed, that maybe put those 3 kids in. So at least 2 people in there that they get.
We'll see what we can do. And just to echo what everyone said, it's our requirements to be at work are much more stringent this year than last year. That's the COVID screener. So you've got a lower supply of subs and a greater demand because we're telling people if you've got the sniffles or a sore throat, stay home because you potentially could be asymptomatic and spreading the virus. So it's a perfect storm of trying to cover the waterfront and pinch hit where we have to.
Okay,
everybody's trying to do the best that they can.
I know.
I know we had 2 teachers, and there may be more that I don't know about, but there are 2 teachers at elementary that actually taught on the breaks from a BOCES workshop because that school didn't have enough coverage that day. So they were kind of piecemealing it together, and they literally clicked into their classroom remotely whenever they could do it during the workshop. So, you know, we really are stretched, and thank you to people who are trying their very best to make this work.
And it's funny, Lori, because we are kind of sharing staff as much as we can without violating any IEPs. So there'll be times like in our elementary, there's ICT TAs. They're not on an IEP. So if I can share them, like Margaret's like, do you have somebody we can share? Because we have 15 people out today. I'm like, sure, let me go through and quickly find. So we're doing the best we can. As Laura said, I have been interviewing. I have a teacher going out in April. I will have 5 maternity leaves this year. And I think I called 7 or 8 people a couple days ago from OLAS. I got 2 phone calls back. So, I mean, even getting phone calls back and getting teachers to come and just talk to you it's really difficult. And these are specialized people that I need for this classroom. So, you know, the more, and the other thing is the problem with aides too, they can't instruct. All they can do is be an adult in the classroom. There's no instruction. So the more TAs we have, the better. But the aides are really not as useful as the TAs. That's the other problem with the aides, is they can supervise.
You know, but at least they can make sure the kids stay engaged or something
Exactly.
like that. I don't
They can
know.
oversee, and if the teachers are leaving the lessons, they can help, you know, and redirect on the computer, but that's really that role of that aide. So it's even harder with a, you know, I'd love to find more building subs is what I keep telling people, but you can always be a building sub. I know it's a long-term sub, but guess what? We can make you a building sub. So there's always something that I'm trying to offer people as well. So as Laura says, we sell the position as much as we can.
And at the secondary levels, you know, the teachers, if they are working remotely, they are instructing remotely. So they're traditionally, you know, in the hybrid, not traditionally this year, they're doing the hybrid model. So they have half their students in front of them, half them are remote. If that teacher has to be remote, then they have the full class remote. For that period of time, there may be a group of kids who need a location where we can supervise them, but they are still being instructed by their teacher. It's not the best thing. We would love to have a body with those kids at all times, but you know, sometimes those are the unfortunate choices we have.
And Lori, definitely, you know, the high school is the one suffering because we had to move several teacher aides and teaching assistants to the elementary schools because Lisa didn't have it. Lisa called me one day and said, you know, we'll be in violation if I don't get these people from the high school. So we had to tell Jim, we're sorry. You know, it's for this year only, but we took how many? 4 or 5, just because we didn't have anyone else in the elementary schools. And obviously, it's easier to manage high school kids than elementary school students. So we had to make that decision. Those are the decisions that we've been making this year.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have new business? All right, so that brings us to our audience comment section. Carmen, do we have anybody with audience comments this evening?
Yes, hi, Carol. Comments to be read tonight.
Okay, so then let me read the rules before we get started. In order to maintain an orderly meeting, the board has established the following guidelines for those wishing to address the board. Each speaker should sign in with the district clerk, or in this case, email the district clerk. When called, each speaker, if we were live, would step up to the podium. In this case, Carmen will be reading the letters or emails. You should state your name and affiliation if applicable. Letters, petitions, and other written material should be sent to the district clerk as well. Each speaker is permitted 3 minutes for their comments and must be recognized by the board president. All comments must be directed to the board president. The board will listen to the comments, but will not necessarily debate or discuss items. Operational matters will be directed to school administrators for handling. The board is not permitted to address personnel or individual student matters in open session. The board may limit repetitive comments in order to give time to others wishing to present, as well as to maintain meeting efficiency. The board expects comments to be made without interference from the audience. In this case, that's us, and in a civil manner. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to read the first email that came in, and it came in from Jasara Pasecki. Carol and the members of the Board of Education. With the new year underway, I wanted to reach out again to express my sincere concern with the implementation of the Princeton Plan for the 2021-22 school year. With a change of this magnitude, it's imperative that we consider whether the community, more importantly our children and teachers, has the capacity to receive the change And 2, whether the district has enough time to effectively manage the change. It's one thing to decide to go on a journey, and it's another thing to bring the rest of the impacted population on the journey with you. I've been paying attention to surveys, participating into Board of Education meeting replays and other community engagement opportunities. And I haven't been able to find how the district plans to manage the change. I seem to recall the discussion at the last Board of Ed meeting where I believe Ms. Ryan asked for the opinion of the community by way of a survey. I haven't seen that follow-up survey come out and would appreciate a status update on the key data point. As a professional change practitioner, I would argue that we don't have time to do so in a thoughtful and complete way, and that's not even considering the impact of COVID-19. Added COVID-19 into the mix makes making this change for the 2021-22 school year borderline irresponsible. Perhaps it makes sense to engage the external consultants who do our recent round of focus groups to help map out a formal change strategy to accompany the decision. Having executed large-scale transformational efforts at a large global financial institution, I am happy to discuss my thoughts with you at any time. Please feel free to respond to this email and reach out to me. That was Mrs. Jasara Pesky.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Pesky, for your input. And, we do need community members to step up and give us their opinions on what's going on. So I'm very happy that you've been paying attention, not just you, but everybody who's been paying attention. And hopefully some of your questions were answered earlier during our update. So please stay tuned over the next few weeks for more chances for public participation in this process. Thank you.
So the next email that came in was from Shannon Silva. Good afternoon, Board of Ed members. I hope that you all have stayed well through the pandemic and do look forward to when we can be in person again. I have a few questions regarding Princeton Plan. I'm requesting being shared with the public at tonight's Board of Education meeting. Please read this aloud tonight. My first question, why the community is not being allowed to vote on Princeton Plan? In the attached link, you will find communication with the board and the New York State Controller. The board state on page 7 that if approved by district voters, this will take place in 2020-21. I know that the timing is a bit off, but I'm not sure why the board has decided not to allow the vote. My second question pertains to the Title I status. BV is a fully Title I. What will happen to Title I status moving forward should Princeton Plan be set into motion? My final question for the board is more of a clarification. As said before, there will be staff cuts should we move to Princeton. I'm very concerned about the SPED teacher at the middle school level. What will happen should we decide to keep that teacher on? Would the district lose funding, be fined, or are we just meeting the bare minimum requirements? Please respond with where and how to find this information. Thank you for your time and efforts. Shannon Silva.
Thank you, Ms. Silva. I know we addressed the vote issue earlier, and sounds like the PPS department can answer your other questions for you. So you can expect some communication from them sometime soon.
And then we've received 2 emails tonight as the board meeting was happening. The next one came in from Erica Mills. Hello, members of the Board of Education. In regards to the ICT concerns voiced by both general ed and PPS special ed parents at the last SEPTA meeting, I would like to point out that this is our right as community members, SEPTA members, and advocates of all students, whether we have PPS students or not, to ask questions and advocate for students that fall under special education. Just because I'm a general education parent doesn't mean I don't have concerns about our special education students and families. To mention that we asked questions and all the other parents seem to be okay with the model is misleading. While I may not be a special education parent, I know that there are concerns from parents. Lori mentioned hearing from parents, and I will admit that I have heard from parents as well. It was interesting to hear that they all had CSE meetings and are on board with this change because I'm consistently hearing otherwise. So I ask, are parents truly okay with this change, or are they not given any other choice? Moving beyond the CSE meetings with parents and the SEPTA meeting, there is a confusion around the reason for this change at this time. Whether our students are special ed or general ed, We need to be sure that they have all the support in place to be sure they succeed and are caught up once we return to September, when we hope this pandemic is behind us. What happens if this indirect consultant model fails and students begin to fail? While you mentioned earlier that not all students need ICT for all classes, what happens when they do? What is the plan for them when they fail or fall off course? It seems like a lot to expect 11, 12, and 13-year-olds to be academically, emotionally ready to deal with setbacks on their own. What training, if any, will we offer our general education teachers in the classes to help identify when students need help? Will the indirect consultant teacher be able to come into the classroom to oversee things at that time? I'd also like to mention that supplement at the middle school is available to students, but not all students have it. It is not easy to move from classroom to classroom to see other teachers, especially this year. Historically, students work independently, or they attend math AIS, reading AIS, chorus, band, orchestra, or art electives during that time. Students who are not told to usually don't go to the other teachers on their own during supplement. The kids that take advantage of supplement are usually the self-starters, not the children that need help. I could be wrong about this, but this is what I have known supplement to be in the past. I'm sure in some cases, teachers have encouraged students to come for help, but unless we know that is how it is going to be utilized, it seems misleading to explain that it is what supplement is being used for. Whose responsibility will it be to make sure that the kids who are falling behind use supplement to get the help they need, and what happens when the children don't have it as an option? When making cuts or changes, there should be transparency, acceptance of parent feedback, and concerns, as well as
Sorry,
openness.
time is up. That was 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Carmen, is there much more to the state?
Not much more.
All right, so why don't we finish that one off, please?
When making cuts or changes, there should be transparency, acceptance of parents' feedback and concerns, as well as openness to adjust as time goes on and data is collected. Our children are not numbers, they are people. We need to be sure we are offering them every opportunity to be successful and be willing to hear from any and all parents. I know you can't necessarily answer my questions here, which is fine, but we owe these students and parents a true, reasonable explanation of what changes are being made, as they will have major and lasting impacts on their future success in school. Thank you, Erica Mills. Okay, the next.
Yep. Thank you, Erica. This sounds like another PPS discussion and perhaps a really good topic for a SEPTA meeting. I think some of these topics were brought up in a recent SEPTA meeting, but if the parents are still unsure about what's going on or need further communication on that, I'm sure that Lisa would be happy to provide it.
Okay. The next email that came in was from Rebecca Quigley. For the next public comment section tonight, please read this. Who is Joe meeting with tomorrow to plan the stakeholder meeting dates? Will stakeholder members be present at the meeting and be involved in any decisions? Will we be receiving a poll asking about the availability? March 10th is very soon. What is the time frame for stakeholder committee meetings with the Johnston, Gloversville, and Cortland school districts to hear from schools that adopted PP within the last 5 years? Thank you, Rebecca Quigley.
Okay, thank you. Joe, will you get back with Rebecca and go over her questions? Thank you. Carmen, was that it for comments, public comments?
Yes, that's it for tonight, and we will put that into the record.
Okay, thank you. Into the minutes. All right, so that brings us to the end of our meeting. Can I have a motion to close the meeting, please?
So moved.
Sorry. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, have a good evening. Our next meeting will be, when is our next meeting? That's the March 10th meeting. Okay, we'll see you then, Wednesday, March 10th. That's going to be an important meeting, I think. So everybody have a good evening and we'll see you soon.